guys! Let me start off by wishing you all a very happy new year. So to kick off 2016, I thought it'd be good to share with you my top makeup brushes and tools. So today I'll cover my favorite face makeup brushes, tools, eye and also lips. Now depending on the length of the video, I may have to crop it into 2 videos, but we'll see how that goes. So I'm starting with face brushes. Now amongst face brushes, I have brushes written down so I don't forget the categories. I have foundation brushes, concealer brushes, brushes for setting powder, contouring, and blush, I believe, yeah. So let's begin with brushes for foundation. Now to apply foundation, I have 3 kinds of makeup brushes and tools. The first one being kabuki style brushes. So these can be your flat top or your dome shaped or angled kabuki style brushes, which are really dense and packed. So I like these to get a good coverage, and also I like to use these to sheer out a foundation when I want a lighter finish from a heavier foundation. From Sigma I have 2 brushes. The first being the F80, which is the flat top kabuki brush, and the second being the F84, the angled top kabuki brush. Both are versatile and I do tend to use them without any preference. The second type or the second brand of brushes I have is by Real Techniques. I like their Expert face brush, which is this. The second one being their buffing brush, which is slightly less dense than the Expert face brush. And finally their contour brush. Of the lot, probably my favorite brush is the Real Techniques contour brush, just because it's a good size to go over larger areas like your forehead and your cheeks, but also good for smaller areas such as around your nose, your upper lip, chin, under the eye, etc. The second style of brushes I'd like to use when I want a sheer or a natural finish is the duo fiber brushes. These two are by Real Techniques. This is their stippling brush. I also use this for blush, so that's the reason it's pink in color, but usually it's white. And the second one being their duo fiber contour brush. Both are very similar in purpose, so I really don't prefer one over the other. So apart from brushes, I also use makeup sponges to apply foundation, or also to go over once I have the foundation applied with the brush. So the 2 sponge blender picks are the Real Techniques Miracle Complexion Sponge, which has this beautiful flat shape to apply foundation on larger areas. It also has this pointed tip to go in certain areas that are smaller. Another choice for a sponge applicator is the Beauty Blender, which again has this flat surface for applying foundation to the larger areas and a pointed tip to apply in smaller areas. So I like to use the sponges in 2 ways. First being directly applying the foundation with the sponge. So basically I take a small amount of foundation on the back of my hand, pat the sponge into the foundation, get a good amount, and then dab across the face to build coverage. The second way I like to use sponges is after applying foundation with a makeup brush such as this. So once the foundation is on my face, I like to make it more natural or skin-like by going over with a damp sponge, so just pressing gently over the entire face. So those were all my tools for foundation. Next up is concealer brushes. So for under eye concealing, I do prefer the use of synthetic brushes. Currently I've been using or rotating between 3 Real Techniques brushes. The first one being the base eyeshadow brush. The second one is the domed eyeshadow brush. And the third one is from their Bold Metals collection, which is number 200. So all of them, as you can see, are quite fluffy, dense brushes again, especially these 2. And then I just use these to sheer out the concealer under the eye. For spot concealing, acne scars, and also active acne, I tend to use 2 brushes. The first one being the Kevyn Aucoin concealer brush, which is this teeny tiny brush. I don't know if you can see that. It's really small and pointed, so it's easy to get into the really tiny spots and covering around the acne. And then for larger areas, I tend to use the Bobbi Brown concealer brush, which tends to look like a lip brush, but serves the purpose. It's good to cover larger areas of acne or scarring. So those are my picks for concealer brushes. Next are brushes for setting powder. So to set the under eye area, I tend to use smaller brushes such as the Real Techniques setting brush. Something small that can go into this space right there. I also tend to use the makeup sponges that I discussed earlier, so either the Real Techniques one, so you can use either the flat side or the pointed side to go under the eye. Same for the Beauty Blender sponge. I also tend to use these regular latex sponges. I just soak it under water, and then this flat surface is great for applying powder under the eye. So any of the sponges will do for setting under the eye. Now to set my face, I tend to use one of these brushes on rotation. So of these, 3 of them are by Real Techniques. The first one being a blush brush, second one being a multitask brush, and the third one from their Ball Metals collection, which is number 100. So any of these big brushes which are just good to pick up some powder and then dab on the skin. But my absolute favorite ever since I bought this is the Wayne Goss brush number 14. It looks tiny, but it is amazing. I use this for powder, I use this for bronzer, I use this for blush, contouring, everything. I don't know, it's just a multitask brush. And it is soft. It is probably the softest brush I own. I especially love this because it's so light and feathery. I don't know if you can see that. So it picks up a very small amount of product and it's great to blend it out. And that's the kind of finish I personally like. Don't like to apply too much product. So I highly, highly recommend the Wayne Goss brushes in general, but especially brush number 14. Moving on to brushes for bronzers and contour products. So when it comes to a cream bronzer or a contour, such as the Bronzing Makeup Base by Chanel, I tend to use a synthetic brush, which is the Real Techniques contour brush. It's small and dense enough to pick up a decent amount of product and really buff it onto the skin. So I really love this for cream, contour or bronzing products. Now for powder products, I do tend to use 3 brushes. The first one being Wayne Goss brush number 3. I tend to use this brush for contouring smaller areas such as the sides of your nose or your cupid's bow. For the perimeter of my face, I tend to use 2 products. One being the Wayne Goss brush number 14. So I tend to use this mostly for bronzing. Just applying bronzer all over to warm up the skin tone, I tend to use this. It gives a very light and diffuse kind of a finish. When I need a strong contour, I tend to use the Wayne Goss brush number 2. This is much denser than the other brush and therefore picks up a lot more product. I especially love this to go around my jawline to hide my double chin. So that's my pick for contouring powder. For blush, I tend to like brushes that are not so dense and give a really diffuse, natural looking blush. So I have 2 picks. The first one being the NARS Kabuki brush, which looks like this. And the second one is the Multitasker brush, which is the Wayne Goss number 14. Now, given a choice between the 2, I think I would really prefer the Wayne Goss one, just because the NARS one is a bit scratchy on my skin, especially because I have acne on my cheeks, so I do prefer something that doesn't move the concealer as much, so therefore my choice would be the Wayne Goss brush again.